Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sky Career Talks, where we connect students with professionals sharing their real-world experiences and career journeys. My name is Princess, and today I'm excited to be joined by Ashante Patterson, who'll be sharing insights into her professional path. Ashanti earned her undergraduate degree in English with a focus on business and technical writing from the Rutgers School of Arts and Sciences. She later went on to complete her master's degree in communication and media with a concentration in health communication from the Rutgers School of Communication and Information. She's currently a communications and marketing manager at Mount Sinai. Ashanti, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
You. It's nice meeting you.
You as well. So let's get started. Would you please feel free to introduce yourself and your current role?
Sure. So my name is Ashante Patterson, and I currently work at Mount Sinai Health System for their Icahn School of Medicine. I work for one of their institutes. The institute is called Arnhold Institute for Global Health, and I also manage communications for the Department of Global Health and Health Systems Design. So I pretty much manage communications, do some marketing, and I also do help with a little bit of fundraising because I do have fundraising background.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So it seems like you kind of dabble in different expertise on the job, like comms, communications, marketing. You said a bit of fundraising. So can you give a little bit of insight into what a typical day looks like in your position?
Yeah, sure. So day to day is pretty different. Some days are really busy, some days are pretty light. But for the most part, I work on social media, coming up with content for social media, working on updating content for the website, working on different campaigns. Since I do have a fundraising background, I actually started in fundraising before going into communications. But since I have a fundraising background, I also help with fundraising campaigns. When I was originally hired, I was hired as a communications person, but once they found out I had a fundraising background, they wanted to kind of help, have me help them build up their fundraising at the institute. So also, helping with the fundraising campaigns, writing blogs, posting blogs. Um, so it's a lot of lot of work that I do.
Yeah.
But mostly pretty much all communications based, working with different departments across Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is pretty large, so working across the different departments, on events as well, like promoting different events. It's also something that I do.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So I know you mentioned you did fundraising before going into communications. Was there anything that you kind of did that sort of got you interested in fundraising during like your undergraduate years or even beforehand?
Yeah, I actually kind of got into fundraising by accident. Back when I was at Rutgers, I was interning for American Autism Association in Manhattan, and the position there was an internship. It was a research and fundraising internship, but I thought it was mostly more research based because I originally thought I wanted to go into research. Um, but it was actually more fundraising than research. So I kind of got involved in research and fundraising. But I was able to help with campaigns doing that, internship. And that's when I started realizing, oh, I like being able to, help raise money, but also raising money for a cause and, just being able to have an impact. Because basically, with fundraising, you're raising money and
Yeah.
you're, proving that impact. So that's something that I liked, and I kind of wanted to stick with that. But in my, positions while I was working in fundraising, I always was involved in communications. So that's kind of how I ended up in communications because I always ended up doing both.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's definitely true that you can like start a new activity or venture and find that, it can introduce you to a whole different sort of career path that you weren't expecting to do, or just like regular like
Hmm.
activities that you weren't expecting to take part in. So I know
Right.
you were talking about your time at Rutgers. Could you please tell us a little bit more about your academic background and how that sort of prepared you for your professional career in communications and marketing?
Sure. So, at Rutgers, I got my bachelor's at Rutgers. So I was studying English. Originally I wanted to go into research, but once I realized I wasn't good at statistics, I had to kind of move out of research. So I realized, okay, I'm actually good at writing. I like reading, so I decided to change my major and go into English. And then they had a minor called English and Business and Technical Writing. I don't even know if they still have that now, but that I thought was beneficial for me because I wanted to go into writing and communications. So I thought that having that, both the English and the business technical writing as a skill set would be really great because then I can go into proposal writing, grants. So that's something that I, kind of prepared for in advance. So while I was at Rutgers, I was attending, career fairs, I was interning, I was really active on campus, just trying to learn all I could, um, within the English major. So that's something that really helped me in my career because, having that writing background helped a lot with writing campaigns, writing blogs, just being able to write, being able to like, just being creative is something that I learned through the English major. And then once I got that degree, later on I returned and I got the master's communication and media degree, the MCM program. That program helped me out a lot because that program actually helped me to kind of segue into more of a communication role because at the time I was in fundraising a lot more and it was kind of hard to transition completely into communications because of the fundraising background. So that program helped me, learn more about marketing, learn more about the kind of the inside in and outs of like communications and helped me improve my writing because the papers and things that I had to write. But I really enjoyed that program and I'm glad that I was in that program part of the year.
Yeah, that's amazing. And definitely knowing how to, find your strong suits and knowing how to pivot into the career that you're ultimately, wanting to break into is definitely an important skill to have, especially those communication skills that you were able to build throughout your education. So thank you for that insight. I'm kind of curious, was there any like particular turning point or like defining moment in your career that got you to where you are now, especially in like a manager position?
Sure. So I would definitely say my bachelor's degree. As I mentioned, I was in fundraising a lot more in my career. Like in my earlier career, a lot of my positions were fundraising based. And I was actually worked at Rutgers before I got well, I was in the communications program and working at Rutgers at the same time. But the role that I was in at Rutgers was actually a fundraising role. So I was working in like alumni relations, fundraising.
Mhm.
So in order for me to kind of fully transition into communications, at the time I thought, the only way is to kind of get a degree in communication so I can show like, even though I'm doing communications at my job, I actually also have a degree in communications. So I wanted to go into healthcare communication, so that's why I chose health communication. Um, so that's something that was kind of like a defining moment for me was when I realized, okay, I want to really branch out more into communications and to get a, higher role in communications. So I had to enroll into the master's program.
Interesting. I wanted to ask, how did you figure out that you wanted to sort of go into more of the healthcare side of communications? Because I know there's so many different fields and domains that you could work in. Was it like
Mhm.
your interest in research that kind of got you interested in working in healthcare from like a communication standpoint?
Right. So originally I started off in research, mostly in medical conditions, like doing research with doctors on like heart disease and diabetes.
Mm,
But once I realized that just wasn't my path, I figured, is there a way I can kind of bring that and communications together? So that's when I realized there's, a field called healthcare communications. So I figured if I can get a degree in communications and work in health field, sector, then I could kind of bring it all together. So now that I'm in healthcare, I can write about, these health conditions and kind of promote, the benefits of, going to the doctor and, getting checkups and learning more about heart disease and diabetes and, conditions that are affecting a lot of people, especially within the Black community.
yeah. That's amazing. Wow. I know you mentioned some of the sort of obstacles you had during your education trying to pivot into communications. Was there any like
Hmm.
obstacles you encountered during your career, and how did you sort of overcome that?
Yeah, sure. So towards the beginning of my career, some of the organizations that I worked for weren't as, I guess, financially stable. So I had gotten laid off twice, like back to back. So that was a very challenging time because I would start one job, then I got laid off, then I started another one, then I got laid off. And then it was just a period of time where it was just hard for me to find work. So that was kind of a challenging moment. It was an obstacle for me because I didn't know which way to go. This was before I went and started my master's, but I didn't know, what path I should take, if I should stay with fundraising, if I should go, work for healthcare, if I should, work for higher education, should I stick with nonprofits? So at the time I felt like, moving out of nonprofits was the best at the moment because I kept getting laid off. So I wanted to work somewhere that had a little bit better financial stability. But I did enjoy working at the nonprofits. So then that's when I, enrolled in my master's program and started working at Rutgers. And then I transitioned into healthcare.
Oh, that's a great story. Definitely inspirational. I know there's a lot of uncertainty within the job market now, but it's definitely great that
Hmm.
you're able to sort of find your place within your career. So one of the last questions is, what sort of advice would you give to aspiring young professionals in your field, or just Rutgers Sky students who are looking to break into communications?
Yeah, so one of my biggest things, or I guess piece of advice would be networking and getting to know pretty much everyone that you meet at Sky, or just, at Rutgers in general, because you just never know who knows someone else or who can kind of put you in contact with someone. So definitely going to, the different career fairs, just building relationships. That's something that I think is very important. And especially as a student, you might not think it's as important sometimes, but it's definitely something that just builds a lot of, it's just relationships with people in the community. And that's something that will help your career. And another thing is writing, definitely strengthening your writing, even if you have to take, separate courses outside of Rutgers or something. Like when I was a student, I took courses at Rutgers, and I also took courses outside of Rutgers to strengthen my writing and editing. So if you can learn those like writing and editing, I think you're good to go. Because if you can write, that's always a great skill to have.
Mhm.
Um, and writing, being able to communicate with stakeholders and having good networking skills is only some good advice for students.
That's amazing. Definitely, I would say writing is such a valuable skill, and you'll need it within any role that you want to break into. So, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us
You're
today.
welcome.
I know our students will gain a lot of valuable insight from what you had to share and just hearing about your career journey and experiences. So, thank you so much for that.
Thank you. It was great meeting you.